So you're right. Pittsburgh eventually will have to find that long-term solution at quarterback. The short term, though, seems to be Aaron Rodgers. He's wearing the black and yellow. The 4-time MVP is in Pittsburgh, but he only seems like a shell of his former self. I mean, last year, things did not go well in New York. You mentioned it earlier. And this team looks worse on paper than what he had in New York when he was struggling there. So I guess my question to you, Brooke, would just be, how do you see this whole Rodgers situation? How do you see him operating in this offense, considering he probably has less weaponry than he had in New York?
Yeah, I mean, that's the $1 million question, or I guess the $10 million question, because what Aaron Rodgers does is not really what Arthur Smith wants to do or what the Steelers want to do. Arthur Smith, when we talked with him in the offseason or talked with Mike Tomlin, Omar Khan, the goal was to be a balanced offense, if not a run-first offense. They've invested so many resources in rebuilding this offensive line. Obviously, they let Najee Harris walk in free agency, or not give him the fifth-year option. But they drafted Caleb Johnson. They've still got Jalen Warren. This is a team that is building from the trenches out. Aaron Rodgers is a quarterback that threw the ball the most or the second most times in the league last year. And granted, a lot of that is dictated by circumstance, but Aaron Rodgers wants to have the ball in his hands, and he wants to be the one to call the shots. Arthur Smith did not a big piece of contention with the Steelers offense last year is that Russell Wilson felt like he didn't have the ability to change the play call at the line of scrimmage, that he was kind of handcuffed by Arthur Smith's play calls. Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to be handcuffed. That has been a thing throughout his career. And he's tried to push back on that narrative a little bit since he got to Pittsburgh and say that, that's not a thing that he has demanded. But there has been reporting throughout that he wants that freedom. And so I think that there could be a power struggle unless they can come to a compromise. But I do think that this is a situation where if he can, when we talk about, raw talent versus being smart, if Aaron Rodgers can kind of take a step back and recognize, hey, I'm not, 35 years old. I'm not 36 years old. I'm not playing at my MVP level. I need to get the ball out of my hands, give it to the guys who, give it to my playmakers, let them run the ball, have a balanced offense, rely on guys to get a lot of yards after the catch. I think that can work. Use some play action. Really the blueprint should be what Arthur Smith did with Ryan Tannehill in Tennessee. If they can do that, great. But that is going to require Aaron Rodgers to kind of take a step back and not, demand the level of control that he has wanted throughout his career.
And I think kind of the other thing too is with this whole Aaron Rodgers situation is you're talking about a run-heavy offense. You also kind of need that elite running back as well sometimes, and we'll see if Jalen Warren can kind of provide that rushing stability. I think it really shocked me, even though there were all these reports that Rodgers could go to Pittsburgh. I still never thought it would work because you're right, he does kind of have this demanding personalities. He hasn't been that flexible, it feels like, throughout his career. And Mike Tomlin and the Steelers don't seem like an organization that's going to bow down to this guy when he comes in 1 year. So I am very curious to see how that does play out. Since Roethlisberger has retired, Pittsburgh has started a different QB in week 1 than they have in week 18. Sometimes that's due to injury, and sometimes they just have to switch things up. Let's put injury aside because that is a risk for Aaron Rodgers in his 40s. But say he just disappoints. Do you think there's a possibility that that someone else steps in like a Will Howard by the end of the season?
Could be. It's funny. I was at an event. Calvin Austin did a meet and greet at an ice cream shop, and I stopped by and got talking with this older woman who was there. And she was, to show you how polarizing Aaron Rodgers is, she said that she hopes that by like week 3 or 4 that Aaron Rodgers is benched or has given up or something, takes himself out of the equation, and that Mason Rudolph comes in and saves the day, which is wild because, like I said, I started in 2019. That was the year that Ben's elbow went out week 2, I believe, and it was Mason Rudolph, Duck Hodges. Mason Rudolph has the altercation with Myles Garrett. Like, Mason Rudolph was maybe one of the most hated people in Pittsburgh in the AFC North. And now I have Steelers fans saying, gosh, I really hope Mason Rudolph can come in and take over this offense. So
It's like,
that is
God bless him,
a
because I mean, football-wise, Mason Rudolph's not the savior, I don't think.
right a wild turn of events. But it is important to note that in what was that 2023, I believe all the seasons run together because they have just been all so chaotic.
Right.
But he came in after Kenny Pickett got hurt and Mitch Trubisky flamed out very quickly, and he got the Steelers to the playoffs. The offense looked its best when Mason Rudolph was starting down the stretch. So the good thing about Mason Rudolph is that he is very, I think he's consistent, he's safe, he's not risky, he's not going to turn the ball over. And I think that he is a smart player. He's not the long-term answer. I don't know that any quarterback on this roster is the long-term answer, because even Art Rooney said before they drafted Will Howard in a radio interview that whatever quarterback they took this year was a developmental project. There could be things in Will Howard that eventually turn into be a good quarterback. He's got the leadership, he's got the skill set. I don't know that he projects as a starter at any point, but I think that he can, maybe late in the season, if things are really sideways, he gets an opportunity. But to me, when I look at what they could get out of this year, if it's not Aaron Rodgers, if he gets hurt, if whatever happens, I think it really sets up for the 2026 draft in Pittsburgh. The script writers are really working overtime with the possibility of the Steelers being able to draft the future of their franchise in front of a hometown crowd. They've got comp picks to move up if they need to, because I don't think that this is a team that's going to bottom out and get a top 5 pick or something like that. They'll
Right.
have to move up the board. But to me, I think that that's what their focus has to be on, especially since Rodgers has already said he's probably retiring after this year. So, I think you have enough band-aids behind him to get through, but it's got to be about the future and seriously scouting this class. You can't afford to take another swing on a guy like Kenny Pickett and have that fall apart and just get farther and farther behind in the franchise building process.